It was a native population, and there was another meeting of the contact group within the Rammstein-format for defense cooperation with Ukraine under the chairmanship of Germany. It was just false accusation against our country for this catastrophic situation of the civilians in Ukraine, and supporting those Ukrainian army soldiers who kill civilians, just facilitating terror attacks against civilians. The Pentagon had ignored that meeting again, but it was the first event for new Ukrainian Defense Minister Fedorov, who provided a long list for the supplies of long-range missiles, different munitions, and so on. As a result, the Europeans, despite the exhaustion of their own stockpiles of weapons and poor economic figures, offered military aid of $35 billion to Ukraine. The main sponsors of Ukraine are Germany, Norway, $7 billion. And they needed those reports against Russia for that. Sweden, that will pay 3.7 billion euro. Britain, 3 billion British pounds. It's a modest support in comparison with Sweden and Norway. Denmark as well, among the leaders of military supplies to Ukraine. They just bore the burden of more than 24 billion euro from 29 billion euro. It's just investing into the slaughter. They're not worried about the Kyiv regime not being able to win on the battlefield. In this hybrid war unleashed by themselves, because it's just an instrument. And the purposes of the Kyiv regime itself are not able just to steal, to kill. It's not of interest to them. The aggressive purposes of Ramstein and similar gathering, it was stated by Rutte. He said that the support to Ukraine should go on despite the peaceful negotiations, and the alliance believes that it is necessary to further strengthen the Ukrainian army military potential in order to put obstacles to Russia. And now let us remember, back then they demanded a ceasefire. The Westerners requested a ceasefire from Russia, and now they are talking about supplying weapons to the Kyiv regime despite peaceful negotiations. They just aim to continue the slaughter, the hybrid war, and someone steals, someone just enjoys the killing, someone just explaining to their own voters why it is the case and why those problems have appeared. So it's NATO Munich Security Conference. I will just not provide more details because I think it's already clear. But former Western politicians, they highlighted that the militarization of Ukraine and the EU will continue despite the dynamics of the settlement. So the question is, what about the settlement if despite its progress and dynamics, the slaughter will continue with even more zeal, as we understand now from their aspirations. And now we see who wants peace and who does not want that, who's never wanted it. And that confirms the lack of interest of the British EU war party to search for the end to this conflict. So it's just beastly statements by Zelensky himself. He thanked the EU members for the so-called military credit of 90 billion euros, and he called upon them to continue their actions to supply funds to the Ukrainian army and weapons. And he said that he will not take into account any losses. Just imagine his election program, if he is to participate in elections, or will continue to implement this offer of the West despite any losses. So who will vote for him? At least one vote. So he does not need any elections just to swear allegiance before those allegiance until the last Ukrainian, before those who provide funds for him. And who needs to continue this bloody corruption scheme, taking into account that hundreds of billions of funds have been allocated these years, but effect remains a fact. During the Munich conference, he mentioned his intention to monthly kill 50,000 Russians. It was just his insane ideas about NATO membership, requests from NATO and EU members, some 30, 50 year strong, as he said, security guarantees. He said that there will be no election and political settlements without the ceasefire. It's against the background of the statements by Europeans to which he had applauded. Despite the negotiations and settlement, they will not stop those hostilities, but he requested a ceasefire, so unilateral ceasefire. They hope that Russia will pause all that and observe the supplies of weapons, rearmament of the Kyiv regime, and without taking into account its losses. So let them just search for fools themselves. Zelensky tried to focus on the his main target, combating Russia. It was a disagreement within the transatlantic partnership. German Chancellor Merz has mentioned that. He said that the transatlantic partnership is a quotation no longer something that they can take for granted. The Germans can take for granted. He said it's a big abyss. End of quote. So this support is regarded by the Kyiv regime as a carte blanche for terrorist crimes, military crimes. Before another negotiations round in Geneva that has now started, he intensified attacks against civilians and civilian infrastructure of Russia.